This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you by Faulkner University. Choosing where to go to college is a big decision, and Faulkner University is the right choice for many reasons. First and foremost, they're committed to biblical teaching. Each of their 85 outstanding academic programs infuse Christian principles into the curriculum and prepare students for professional success in their career and meaningful service in their community. Their main campus in Montgomery, Alabama offers an abundance of opportunities for internships, networking, and entertainment. Over 96% of their students receive financial aid, making Faulkner education a great value. Faulkner is a Christian university dedicated to helping you grow strong in your faith, and their family-like atmosphere will make you feel right at home. Check out faulkner.edu today.
Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis. We are glad that you are here with us. It is brought to you this week by Lads to Leaders, which is coming up April the 15th through the 17th this year. That will be, as usual, Easter weekend. A little Easter egg as well, as it will be Passover weekend. It lines up just right this year. So just if you wanted to have a couple of notes to put back, that is that weekend. We would love for you, and they would love for you to be a part of this great program. It started many, many years ago by Brother Jack Zorn, and it has grown to be in several cities. I'm not exactly sure how many. You guys may know the number, but it is about 5 or 6 of them. It's in India now. And so we're really glad that they are on board with the podcast. So, fellas, how y'all doing today?
I'm doing awesome. I am great. We've kind of broke our streak. The last few episodes we've been together in person somehow, some way. We were on a roll there, but now we're all back to our humble abodes. But it is, as always, awesome to jump on, and I'm excited, as I always am when we have a guest. Will, but how are you doing, man?
I am doing great, excited. I'm going to tread real lightly on today's episode, just so that my marriage can stay in the right direction, which means my lovely wife.
You said it right.
I have a lovely life because of my lovely wife, Lynsey. First time on the podcast, excited to hear the things that she'll say. She's way smarter than me, and will just bless us way more than I ever can. And so
that was pretty good.
She's beautiful. She's kind. She's compassionate.
Okay. That's enough.
Just
good.
That's right.
She doesn't take compliments well, whatever.
Valentine's Day's coming up, boys.
Check.
No, but it's going to be a great episode. She'll have a lot of good stuff to say.
Well, welcome, Lynsey. We're glad that you were with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on. I've never been on before.
Being married to Will, you obviously have a lot of expertise in compassion. So we're going to talk a little bit about that.
He never speaks as nicely about or to us as he did then. But that makes sense. It is his wife. So I'm glad he went that way.
I've learned a lot of compassion from her, which helps me give y'all the compassion that, having to put up with y'all shenanigans on a weekly, daily basis.
Well, we always shoot to hit our bases of the helping, healing, and humor. And so, Lynsey, your family, some of my favorite folks. I always like keeping up with all the stuff you guys are doing. The Lifted Balloon Co. There it is, throwing it out there.
Right.
Some good stuff, great posts, keeps us updated. Obviously, you've got a wonderful daughter, Emmie, who has actually been on the podcast already. So, a couple of our lives
are way into the room.
That's right.
But we did want you to come on, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the loss that you've experienced. And once again, I mentioned the idea of compassion and where you've seen it, maybe where you've experienced it and been brought along in your journey to do the things that you do and have accomplished. Tell us a little about yourself, Lynsey.
Well, it's funny that we're talking about compassion because that's something that I have to work on all the time. But I think a lot of it has started with my family. I had just had Emmie. Emmie's 3 now, so it all started 3 years ago in October of 2018. And I knew my grandmother was pretty sick. She had cancer, and we knew that it was probably going to, she was going to pass soon. Yeah. But just having a baby, I was very, very, very close to her. She helped raise me. I mean, she babysat me and took me in when my parents were working. And, I was just with her all the time. So I was very close with her. But I had Emmie, and then 10 days later, she passed away. But right? Yes, that's crazy. So it was Emmie's due date. Emmie's due date was October 13th. And we talked about that date so many times with her, and she was so excited. And, we didn't know that we'd actually lose her on that day. But I feel like Emmie came a little bit earlier than we expected, and she got to meet her, and, we got to be with her when she passed. So that was really special that she got that time with her. But that was really hard on me because she's my grandmother. And we all expect to lose an older person in our life, but, that was very, very difficult.
There's a lot. How do you say this nicely? There's a lot of hormones. Like,
yes.
Postpartum, we were just a week and a half removed from Emmie being born. And Lynsey had a pretty, not like a scare, but just some issues pregnancy with blood pressure after the pregnancy, where we stayed in the hospital for another 5 days. We let Ben sneak up there, but outside of Ben, it was kind of like, hey, we don't want anybody coming to the hospital, and then get out of the hospital, and immediately, here comes this right after that.
Yeah, so I remember Will coming in the nursery. I was rocking Emmie to sleep, and he was like, I think you need to go see your grandmother. So that was really hard, but I'm so glad that she got to meet her. But fast forward to August 2019. Emmie was almost a year old at that point. She was born in October, so almost a year old. And I was still having a hard time with my grandmother. We were having all the firsts of birthdays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, all those things were coming up or had just happened. And, we were taking it pretty hard still, even almost a year in. And then I remember, I think Auburn was playing Tennessee.
Yeah, we were watching a football game.
Yeah, we were watching a football game and about to go meet friends to meet a baby. And my dad called me twice. My dad doesn't normally call me, like, just randomly. And I just knew something was going on. So I called back, and he said, Lynsey? And I was like, okay, something's wrong. And he said, Neil passed away. And Neil was my 25-year-old cousin that we lost very suddenly. We didn't know what happened at the time. And, being 25, that just doesn't happen. That's not supposed to happen. And that just shook our world, for sure. And so
it was tough because Granny was the first person, like, on that side of the family, that we kind of lost with everybody together. It was, everybody was there. And then we lost Granny, and that put a big hole because all the parties, birthday parties, Christmas parties, everything was at her house with Pawpaw. And, she was just kind of the life of the party. Like, we had Easter, and I know this is going to go pretty funny for the three of us. We had Easter, and she took a big Nick Saban poster and put it outside on a Target, and everybody threw eggs at it. Like, she really was.
She was just funny.
She was the life of she was the life of the party, And when we lost her, there was that hole. Well, then, like, Neil was the next life of the party. Yeah. He was, whatever needed to be done.
Funny one, like, larger than life, like, always dancing and goofing around, and, just he was just awesome. And we grew up together. My cousins are from Coleman, and I grew up in Decatur. So, I mean, we were maybe 20 minutes away from each other. So, I mean, I remember in the summer we would spend the night for weeks at a time at each other's houses. We never really took breaks with each other. So this wasn't just like a distant cousin that I never saw, that I lost. This was like the closest thing to a brother that I've ever had.
He was the only male.
Yeah, it's 5 grandkids on that side of the family, and it's 4 girls and then Neil. And so I felt like I lost a brother. That's as close as he was to me, as I could get to having a brother. And I always wanted that. He was so good to us and so much fun. So that rocked our worlds, having both of them gone. And then we lost Neil in 2019 of August. And then around Thanksgiving that same year, my dad started getting really sick. And we weren't totally sure what was going on. And we started figuring out more of what was wrong. But he ended up in the hospital at UAB several times. And he was in the hospital at Decatur. And I remember looking at Will and I was like, I think he's dying. My dad was 52. They had me pretty young, and so, I mean, they were married. But like right out of college had me, and so he was a young dad, and I did not expect to lose him, especially after losing 2 other people that were so important in my life. It just felt like Satan was just constantly attacking our family. And I remember us saying, we used to be that family that there was nothing, that anybody talked about, or nothing that anybody would mention, or, we were all boring, like we had our porch parties and we were always together and playing games and doing fun stuff as a family. And then all of this hit within a year and a half. So around January, it's almost been 2 years this month. But around January, he got put on the ventilator and he passed away about 3 weeks later.
Yeah, he was on the ventilator for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
and this was in 2020 at that point, beginning of 2020. And then everybody knows what happens next with COVID hit, and it was just a whirlwind. I mean, we lost him February 19th, and then
March 1 was like shut down.
Yeah, March was shut down. I remember my mom and my sister and I went to Atlanta, and we took Emmie just to get out and get away from everything. And then the whole world shut down, and it was my first year of teaching. I had a 1-year-old. I mean, it was the craziest year of my life. It was just a lot of curveballs, one right after the other. And school shut down, and I was dealing with that grief by myself. And yes, Will was a vital part of that, but he was also grieving too, because he was very close to all 3 of those people.
I got to preach all 3 funerals.
Yeah, he did. So, that was a very, very hard time for me, having everybody shut down, and it wasn't the normal, come and spend time with me and, help me get through those difficult times. It was like, you got to stay in your house and you can't go anywhere or do anything. And I think that's the worst thing to do with grief, is just sitting there and not getting out of bed. And
And unfortunately, you're not the only one now through these 3 years, but especially that year, there were a lot of people who had to go through grief in that way. And I guess, like you said, those were some of the first major losses you had, and I guess you don't have a whole lot to compare them to as far as like what was it like to grieve when there were people that could really be around you versus the isolation, that you had. And it not just the isolation for you, but as far you had some family, you guys were still around each other, but you couldn't go to work and do work like you had always, or had been doing that first year. Like you said, it was your first year. So there's something called compounded grief, and that's where it's just one after another after another. And, that's exactly what you were going through during that time. So I don't know if there's any way you can compare what that was like in those moments to something else, because I'm not sure if you've, how much more you've experienced maybe before that or after or since that you could compare it to.
I mean, Granny for sure. I mean, that was a much more normal thing, but also just had a baby. And then, with Neil, that was the most unexpected thing ever. I mean, he was okay one day, and then the next day he was gone. And so there was no warning. There was warning with my grandmother and with my dad. I mean, my dad was put on a ventilator. I mean, we knew what was most likely going to happen. And that doesn't make it any easier, but I've been on both sides of like being a little bit more prepared and then being like totally shocked. And I mean,
I think it was just, it's almost like you look, and I know everybody's grief's different, but it was just like the timetable. Like, and Lynsey and I were talking about this earlier today. We had so many people come up to us and go, time is just going to heal things. And you're like, that's just the biggest lie ever. It's like, for those of you listening, like,
don't say
another
that.
one of those things. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I get what people are trying to say, but it's like, there's times where I still wake up and go, shoot, I wish I could text my father-in-law. Like, this isn't easier. Like, it's just the realization of he's been gone a whole lot longer than I wanted him to, and I think there's those things that it was just like, boom, here's this grief, deal with it. Bam, here's another one. And then here's another one.
It's like I haven't been able to like focus on one part of grief. Like I've just had to keep going and like just survive in certain ways, especially when the world shut down and we were all isolated. Like that was it's just kind of deal with it and just,
we got,
it is what it is.
The family, and I try not to push my grief or say my grief's bigger than like the family's grief, but like Lynsey's family, we were pretty like fine-tuned, well-oiled machine when it came to running funerals. Because it's like when Granny passed away, it was like, okay, Will's going to preach it, Lynsey's going to do this, Anna's going to do this, Allison and Mark are going to do this, Abby's going to do this. Well, like as soon as Neil died, it was like,
what to do. Check
mark, everybody just get right back in place. And then when Daddy G died, it was like, all right, send this person the picture.
Yeah, it sounds kind of twisted, but it was like we
didn't need the funeral home.
Yeah.
Like, they showed up and were like, we got it. We know what to do. And now granted, Neil wasn't cremated where Daddy G and Granny were.
Yeah.
And so it was like, we don't need the funeral home to show up. We got this. We've done it. Like everything will be fine.
I mean, for every funeral, my granny, she loved giraffes. So we wore her giraffe pins. That's how we celebrated her. And that's how it all started. And then when Neil passed away, he loved Legos. That he was obsessed with them, and he could build anything he wanted in 5 seconds. And so Allison came up with the idea. I think Allison and Abby, maybe Mark, I don't remember who it was, but they came up with getting his Legos, and they hot glued it to a pin. And so we all wore Legos, and we passed them out to his friends. It was like, here, like, and we were giving him candy and pixie sticks because he loved that.
Then it's like when Daddy G died, it was like, okay, what is everybody going to wear?
Yeah. And then we started talking about like, okay, well, what will y'all do when I pass or what? It's like it became almost so normal for our family that it was like, I don't know, almost not a big deal that sounds really weird. But like the process of it was like, okay, well, we do this and this and this. And then.
Well, it became, and I remember that. Didn't your dad, was there a airplane or something?
Yes.
Yeah. So
the Blue Angels and
yeah. So, I mean, like, when you do stuff like that, it becomes more of a celebration, not of the loss, but of the life. And you guys had learned, I think, through those processes to celebrate what was, because that's one thing that, people have brought up about grief is you're not losing all the memories.
Yeah.
The memories will always be there. Everything up till the point that they died is still just as real as it was before. None of that's taken away. It's obviously the future things that get taken from you, and we grieve, but we still get to celebrate all the things that were. And that's kind of what you guys found, was you could celebrate, the Legos and the airplane and the different things that, hey, these were the things that made them special and that we remember them by. And I remember that. Like, there's not a lot I remember about other funerals that I go to, but I remember, those that everybody was wearing those little celebration things.
Yeah, I think it was interesting, and looking back on like how the family handled it, it was almost at times we felt like, hey, we need to help everybody else celebrate. You know, like, we've been through this. Let's do something fun. Let's do something happy. Like, let's do something and not just fall into this like morbid.
Wear black and.
Yeah. But I think in some ways too, we almost kind of struggled to grieve because we were like, Travis, me and you, these sevens over here that are just like, all right, let's do something. Let's celebrate. Let's. And in some ways, I wish we could kind of go back and go, okay, let's.
Yeah, I think that's what I meant by that of like not being a big deal. I mean, it was a big deal, but I think looking back on it later, we were like, whoa, did we just go through all of that? Like, is this real life? Like, I remember my cousin saying, like, I didn't cry when they saw their brother, when they saw his body. I mean, I didn't cry when when he passed, like, I was literally sitting there watching him and the monitor, and it went to 0. I remember not feeling like I thought I was supposed to just cry and have this big moment, and I didn't. And I felt weird feeling that way, and we all did, because it was like, this is not happening again. It can't happen again to us, and I think later that's the hard part, like when it all catches up to you. And when it happens so many times, you're like, okay, I've got to sit back for a minute and just take this all in.
Yeah. I think the issue is that comes out of nowhere sometimes. Like, you're not, it's not like you're ever sitting around going, all right, I'm going to process this now, and you flip the switch and the wave comes over, and nothing like the loss you've experienced, but any kind of difficulty that we face, sometimes it's almost like that out of body experience. Yeah. Like that, I'm not really I don't know how to explain it. You're right. It's kind of weird. It's, I'm not, I was not real in that moment, Well,
a lot of people talk about it being like,
doesn't exist. Yeah.
Like I'm floating over the top of myself looking at this situation, and it's like I see it all transpiring, but it's not real. I think that's where that, it takes a few days sometimes for it to sink in, or weeks or months for it to really become just real and raw. And then it begins where it's those firsts and those things that, you start thinking about that, here's things we're going to miss. Here's things that we're not going to have. And then you begin to really process it. And I think that seems to be a pretty typical thing.
All right, Lynsey, as per tradition on the Helping Healing Humor podcast, brought to you by Lads to Leaders. The Lads to Leaders question of the day is, tell me something fun about how you met Will and you guys started dating. So how did that happen? Was it awkward? Was it funny?
We can make it awkward for some other people.
Let's.
Yeah. We'll get the ratings up for sure. What do you want to share about that?
Can we tag them in? It's the question.
Well, they may see it, they may not. Who knows?
Yeah.
That's okay.
We won't tag anybody.
No, we won't tell anybody. But I met Will from from a guy that I was actually dating at the time, and it was his roommate. And I was a senior in high school. You were what?
A junior in college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you were. And so me and his, his roommate didn't work out, and
Obviously.
That's
a
good thing at this point. I don't know. I thought, hey, I kind of like this guy, and so I kind of talked to him, and he was kind of with some other girl and all that. But we would just talk and hang out, and just kind of happened.
The rest is history. We have an interesting.
It's been downhill for her since.
Ever since. It's like when I asked Dan, I was like, Dan, I think I'm going to propose to Lynsey. Like, I'm doing a video. Do you have any marriage advice? And Dan goes, yeah. And I pull the camera up, and he goes, don't do it. And then just walked out. But we had an interesting love triangle because I was dating a girl who was her intern at Beltline.
Yeah. That's really how we met. And I remember saying that year at CYC, I remember saying to my friends,
CYC.
What if we ran into somebody that we were going to marry? And I swear that year, we met Brienne and we talked with her. Shout out to Brienne. Love her. And they were dating at the time. And so we met Will, and we all thought he was so cute and everything. But then I met him again through, the roommate. And so, that was kind of how that happened. But I thought that was really cool.
CYC, Freed Hardeman.
That's all there. It's all there.
So let me tell you, this is how weird this is for me, Travis. It should be for us. Is they're talking about as teenagers meeting at CYC, and we were probably
y'all
already.
were Ben and Travis.
Yeah, we were already on stage.
And Lynsey and her whole group were arguing with us about how to sing a song.
That's exactly right.
I remember thinking, I'm on stage and you're not. So this is how you sing this song. Also, Ben tried to get me to date Kenya. So we know about
No way. I didn't know that.
That whole awkward situation.
And Kenya has told me multiple times how cute she thought Will was as a little boy at camp because we were adults.
Which also
we know about that. We know how cute Will was at camp.
Especially which proves y'all's age that I was your camper while you were a counselor.
Well, let's be honest. The Lord sent us Will to teach us patience. Will and Matt It's Matt
Burgess.
Right?
Matt Burgess
are the only campers I've not been able to get out of bed before like 10 a.m.
It's still that way some days.
It's true.
Well, Lynsey, it was great. I'm glad and thankful for you sharing with our listeners.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.